Jimi Hendrix opened himself up to demonic beings who used him to initiate the hippie youth into the counterculture revolution. Jimi Hendrix, who claimed to be a voodoo child, stated, quote, "Things like witchcraft, which is a form of expiration and imagination that have been banned by the establishment and called evil, is because people are frightened to find out the full power of the mind." The satanic powers Hendrix unleashed through his music, though, were absolutely destructive. Alan Douglas, the executive curator of Hendrix's musical estate, admitted his spirit possession.
Now, one of the biggest things about Jimmy was what he believed, and he believed that he was possessed by some spirit, and I got to believe it myself, and that's what we had to deal with all the time. But he really believed it, and he was wrestling with it constantly.
Jimi Hendrix was used heavily by these demonic forces who channeled their music through him to initiate the West into the drug revolution through songs like Purple Haze, which was about LSD. Jimi Hendrix realized that he was being used by these demonic beings to hypnotize the youth with their music. Hendrix admitted, quote, "I can explain everything better through music. You hypnotize people, and when you get people at their weakest point, you can preach into their subconscious is what we want to say. That's why the name Electric Church flashes in and out."
The story of Jimi Hendrix is very disturbing. I love all types of music, even the oldie ones. My favorite instrument of all time is the electric guitar. One of my favorite guitarists has always been Prince, which I did a video for also, and Jimi Hendrix. Those are my two favorite guitarist, Jimi Hendrix, because of his antics. But I also did not know a lot spiritually. Growing up, you're just listening to what sounds good and you're watching what sounds good. But as you get more enlightened and you get more spiritually in touch with God and stuff like that, you start to see the problem with a lot of the music and entertainment sources that you like. And you have to say to yourself, oh my goodness, what was I playing inside of my home? And also, being from the Caribbean, though I see a lot of even videos and even articles of people saying that the 27 Club is a ridiculous conspiracy theory, it's just comical because we know that it's true. And even in rituals and seances, music is used a lot in the Caribbean and in African countries, etc. It is a source of conjuring up different demons and spirits that will give you gifts and that will give you wealth, etc. And whatever you desire, the enemy gives gifts also. And a lot of people forget that Satan was a minister of music in heaven. So music is a powerful tool that he uses. So it's not a ridiculous conspiracy, and I'll stand firm on that. But they label people conspiracy theorists when the evidence is in your face. Jimi Hendrix, not only in this video am I going to show you all the evidence with his own mouth, his own words, those who are around him, evidence of the music, but I won't be playing his music. And usually in these videos, I play little snippets of the music of the artists and stuff, but just how boldly he was, I just don't want to. But this is what this video is going to talk about just based on the title. We're going to get straight to it. Jimi Hendrix did have a very traumatic childhood, and I understand his need to be famous because the devil preys on people who had very tough childhood. Hollywood is filled with broken people who were touched, abused, who didn't have it easy in life. You know, that's who he preys on. Those who are desperate for fame, validation, love, acceptance, just to be accepted. Those who don't know who Jimi Hendrix even is, he is an icon, a legend, okay? He was the moment. Despite a career that was tragically cut short, the name Jimi Hendrix has become synonymous with guitar genius, often held as the greatest guitarist of all time. Hendrix's innovative musicianship left audiences both in America and abroad utterly spellbound, literally. His electrifying performances set him apart, even when he shared the stage with other rock luminaries. Hendrix's life, however, was tinged with tragedy. He became part of the infamous 27 Club, a group of talented artists who met their untimely death at the tender age of 27. This ill-fated group includes Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, and Brian Jones, many more, with each death occurring within a 2-year span, okay? Despite his brief career, Hendrix had an impressive track record. He was only famous, like super famous, for 4 years, okay? His band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, scored 3 UK top 10 hits. His big break in the US came after his rousing performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. A year later, his third and final studio album, Electric Ladyland, climbed to #1 on the US charts. This double LP was Hendrix's most commercially successful release and his only #1 album. As the world's highest paid performer, Hendrix headlined the iconic Woodstock Festival in 1969 and the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970. His untimely death soon followed these high-profile performances. Hendrix was a pioneer in the use of tone-altering effects, units in mainstream rock. He was the first to use the fuzz distortion, Octavia, wah-wah, and univibe extensively. He also introduced stereophonic phasing effects and recordings. Holly George Warren of Rolling Stone noted, and I quote, "Hendrix pioneered the use of the instrument as an electronic sound source. Players before him had experimented with feedback and distortion, but Hendrix turned those effects and others into a controlled, fluid vocabulary, every bit as personal as the blues with which he began," end quote. Hendrix's groundbreaking work was recognized with numerous awards. Readers of Melody Maker voted him the Pop Musician of the Year in 1967. In 1968, Billboard named him Artist of the Year, and Rolling Stone declared him Performer of the Year. Disc and Music Echo crowned him the World Top Musician of 1969, and in 1970, Guitar Player named him Rock Guitarist of the Year. The Jimi Hendrix Experience gained further recognition with its induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, and the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2005. Rolling Stones ranked the band's 3 studio albums, Are You Experienced, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland, among the 500 greatest albums of all time. They also named Hendrix as the greatest guitarist and the 6 greatest artists of all time. In a testament to his enduring legacy, Rolling Stone declared Hendrix the greatest guitarist of all time as early as 2023, so just last year, okay? We're going to get into his childhood first and start from the very beginning so I can set the stage for you guys of how he joined the 27 Club so you guys can understand and highlight his career further. First, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Crane Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. So he was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27th, 1942. The man who would become the legendary Jimi Hendrix was of mixed African-American, Irish, and purported Cherokee heritage. He was the firstborn of Lucille's 5 children, a birth that his father Al was denied the chance to witness. Stationed in Alabama during World War II, his father was not granted the standard military furlough usually given for childbirth. His commanding officer even threw him in the stockade to prevent him from going AWOL, escaping to go see his son be born, right? He spent 2 grueling months locked up without trial, and it was there that he received a telegram announcing his son's birth, and he grew very depressed by it. During Al's 3-year absence, Lucille, Jimmy's mother, struggled to raise their son alone. Al was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army on September 1st, 1945. 2 months later, he found his son at the home of a family friend named Miss Champ in Berkeley, California, who had cared for the infant and even attempted to adopt him. This was the first time Al laid eyes on his son. Reunited with Lucille, Al found it tough to secure steady employment, leaving the family in dire straits. Both parents grappled with alcoholism, and their intoxicated spats often forced a young Jimmy to seek refuge in a closet. Jimmy's relationship with his brother Leon was fraught with uncertainty. With Leon frequently in and out of foster care, the threat of separation loomed large. The Hendrix family also included Joseph, born in 1949, Kathy, born in 1950, and Pamela, born in 1951, all his siblings. And all of them were given up to foster care and adoption by Al and Lucille, so they only kept Jimmy. Can you imagine all your siblings being given to foster care? And you were the only one kept. That's crazy. The family moved constantly, living in cheap hotels and apartments around Seattle. Sometimes they would send Jimmy to stay with his grandmother in Vancouver. A naturally shy and sensitive boy, Jimmy was profoundly affected by these experiences. Later in life, he revealed to a girlfriend that he had been sexually taken advantage of by a man in uniform. When Jimmy was 9 years old, his parents divorced. The court granted Al custody of him and Leon. In the mid-1950s, at Horace Mann Elementary School in Seattle, Jimmy began carrying a broom around to mimic a guitar. After over a year of this, the school social worker wrote a letter requesting funding for underprivileged children to get him a guitar, fearing psychological damage if he was left without one. Her efforts were unsuccessful, and Al refused to buy him a guitar. In 1957, while helping his father on a side job, Jimmy found a ukulele amongst the trash they were removing from an old woman's home. The woman allowed him to keep the instrument, which had only 1 string. He taught himself to play by ear, strumming along to Elvis Presley's Hound Dog. By the age of 33, Lucille developed cirrhosis of the liver, his mother, and on February 2nd, 1958, she died from a ruptured spleen. Al, in a questionable move, gave his sons shots of whiskey instead of taking them to their mother's funeral, insisting that this was how men should grieve. In 1958, Hendrix completed his studies at Washington Junior High School, but he did not graduate from Garfield High School. Despite all these hardships, Jimi Hendrix would rise to become one of the most celebrated musicians of the 20th century. In the middle of 1958, a pivotal moment occurred in the life of a young 15-year-old Jimi Hendrix. He got his hands on his first acoustic guitar, which he bought for a mere $5, which is equivalent to about $51 today. It was a humble beginning, a legendary musical journey. The budding musician would spend countless hours each day honing his skills, closely observing other seasoned guitarists, and immersing himself in the soulful sounds of blues icons like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, and Robert Johnson. A chance encounter in 1959 at a Hank Ballard and the Midnighters concert in Seattle introduced Hendrix to the group's guitarist, Billy Davis. Davis took Hendrix under his wing, showing him some guitar tricks and even arranging a short gig with the Midnighters. Eager to make his mark, Hendrix formed his first band, the Velvetones. However, his acoustic guitar proved to be a disadvantage as it barely cut through the sound of the group. After a 3-month struggle, he came to the realization that an electric guitar was indispensable for his musical ambitions. In mid-1959, his father finally gave in and bought him a white Supro Ozark. He joined the Rocking Kings and performed at various professional venues, including the Birdland Club. Tragedy struck when his guitar was stolen after being left backstage overnight. His father stepped in once again, this time buying him a red Silvertone Dan Electro. A brush with the law saw Hendrix facing a choice between prison or the army after being caught twice in a stolen car before he turned 19. He chose the army and enlisted on May 31st, 1961. Following an intense 8-week basic training at Fort Ord, California, he was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky as part of the 101st Airborne Division. His letters home painted a picture of grueling physical training and relentless harassment. Missing his guitar, which he had left in Seattle with his girlfriend Betty Jean Morgan, Hendrix wrote to his father asking him to send it over as he needed it now. His father complied, sending over the red Silvertone Dan Electro. However, his obsession with the instrument led to neglect of his military duties, resulting in mockery and even physical abuse from his peers. In November 1961, a fellow serviceman named Billy Cox was captivated by the sound of Hendrix playing. The two quickly bonded over music with Cox, describing Hendrix's style as a fusion of John Lee Hooker and Beethoven. They soon began performing at bass clubs over the weekends with a band called The Casuals. And despite completing his paratrooper training and earning the esteemed Screaming Eagles patch in January 1962, Hendrix's conduct began to raise eyebrows. He was scrutinized for being an unqualified marksman, often found asleep on duty, and missing bed checks. His platoon sergeant, James C. Spears, recommended his discharge, stating, "He has no interest whatsoever in the Army. It is my opinion that Private Hendrix will never come up to the standards required of a soldier. I feel that the military service will benefit if he is discharged as soon as possible," end quote. On June 29, 1962, Hendrix was granted a general discharge under honorable conditions. He would later express his disdain for the Army. In the autumn of 1962, after his comrade Billy Cox had been discharged from the military, Jimi Hendrix relocated with him about 20 miles from Fort Campbell to Clarksville, Tennessee. Here they formed a band called the King Casuals. Back in Seattle, Hendrix had watched in awe as Butch Snipes played his guitar using his teeth. Now, the King Casuals' second guitarist, Alfonso Baby Boo Young, was pulling off this same remarkable stunt. Not one to be overshadowed, Hendrix too mastered this technique. He later quipped, "The idea of doing that came to me in Tennessee. Down there you have to play with your teeth, or else you get shot. There's a trail of broken teeth all over the stage," end quote. Hendrix earned his keep playing at various venues across the South that were part of the Theater Owners Booking Association, also known as the Chitlin Circuit. Besides fronting his own band, Hendrix played backup for a string of soul, R&B, and blues musicians, including big names like Wilson Pickett, Slim Harpo, Sam Cooke, Ike and Tina Turner, and Jackie Wilson. By January 1964, Hendrix felt he had outgrown the Chitlin Circuit artistically. Frustrated by the constraints imposed by band leaders, he decided to strike out on his own. He moved into the Hotel Teresa in Harlem. In February 1964, Hendrix's talent was recognized when he won first prize at the Apollo Theater's amateur contest. Eager for a breakthrough, he played the Harlem Club circuit and made guest appearances with various bands. He toured extensively with the Isley Brothers during much of 1964 until he grew weary of performing the same set night after night and decided to leave the band in late October. Shortly afterwards, he joined Little Richard's touring band, the Upsetters. However, his relationship with Richard was fraught with constant disagreements over punctuality, wardrobe choices, and Hendrix's flamboyant stage antics. In late July, Richard's brother Robert fired Hendrix despite this setback. And on July 27th, Hendrix signed his first recording contract with Judgy Moray at Sue Records and Copa Management. In 1966, he earned his first composer credits for two instrumentals, Hornet's Nest and Knock Yourself Out, which were released as a single by Curtis Knight and the Squires. Feeling stifled by his experiences as an R&B sideman, Hendrix moved to New York City's vibrant and diverse Greenwich Village in 1966. Let's talk about the Jimi Hendrix experience. In the whirlwind of 1966, Jimi Hendrix's life took an electrifying turn. Bassist Chas Chandler of the rock band The Animals saw Hendrix's raw talent and decided to manage him. With this new partnership, Hendrix packed his bags and made the bold move across the pond to England, leaving behind the New York music scene. Chandler was determined to assemble a band that would showcase Hendrix's extraordinary talents. This led to the formation of the now iconic Jimi Hendrix Experience. In November, they had a short residency at the Big Apple Club in Munich, marking their first performance in Germany. Here, Hendrix had a transformative experience. When an overly enthusiastic crowd pulled him off stage, he responded by smashing his guitar in a dramatic explosion of sound. The crowd loved it, thinking it was part of the show. Seeing the audience reaction, Chandler decided to make this act of destruction a permanent feature of the Experience performance. The band's reputation continued to grow after a mid-November performance at London's Bag O' Nails nightclub. Attendees included rock royalty like Eric Clapton, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Jeff Beck, Pete Townsend, Brian Jones, Mick Jagger, and Kevin Ayers. This stunning performance led to Hendrix's first interview published in Record Mirror under the headline Mr. Phenomenon. The article predicted that Hendrix was going to whirl around the business like a tornado, causing writer Bill Harry to marvel at the trio's full big swinging sound. When asked about the band's genre, Hendrix said, "We don't want to be classified in any category. If it must have a tag, I'd like it to be called Free Feeling. It's a mixture of rock, freak out, rave, and blues," end quote. On the evening of March 31st, 1967, as the electrifying sound of rock music filled London's Astoria, a plan was hatched to catapult the Jimi Hendrix Experience into the media limelight. Backstage, Hendrix and his manager, Chas Chandler, were brainstorming ways to make their act more sensational. They sought guidance from journalist Keith Altham, who suggested they needed spectacle even more dramatic. Altham, seizing on the idea of destruction, retorted saying, "Well, it's a pity you can't set fire to your guitar," end quote. This exchange sparked an idea in Chandler's mind. He quickly dispatched road manager Gary Stickles to fetch some lighter fluid. Later that night, at the climax of an explosive 45-minute set, Hendrix shocked the crowd by setting his guitar on fire. This outrageous act instantly captured the imagination of London's press, who dubbed Hendrix the Black Elvis and the Wild Man of Borneo. Alex Vadical of Rolling Stones later said when Jimi Hendrix set his guitar on fire at the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, he created one of rock's most perfect moments. The band's debut album, Are You Experienced, released in the UK on May 12, 1967, was a resounding success. It spent 33 weeks on the charts, peaking at number 2, only kept from the top spot by the Beatles' legendary Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The band's second album, Axis, Bold as Love, showcased psychedelic cover art depicting Hendrix and the Experience as various avatars of Vishnu, a supreme deity known as the preserver in Hindu mythology. So he did get a lot of backlash for his art cover. During the recording for their third and final studio album, Electric Ladyland, cracks started to appear in the band's dynamics. So Chandler grew frustrated with Hendrix's relentless pursuit of perfection and the chaotic atmosphere in the studio with a constant influx of friends and guests. This tension led Chandler to part ways with Hendrix. Noel Redding, the band's bassist, also felt overwhelmed by the crowded studio environment, stating, "There were tons of people in the studio. You couldn't move. It was a party, not a session," end quote. However, the strain of this disagreements proved too much for the band. The Jimi Hendrix Experience, once a powerhouse of rock and roll, eventually disintegrated due to the mounting tension and disagreements. Despite their breakup, the band's legacy endures, forever immortalized in the annals of rock music history. Now let's get into the events of his tragic death. In the turbulent year of 1969, Jimi Hendrix, the wild-eyed guitar-wielding wizard of rock, reigned supreme as the highest-paid musician in the world. As the world was grappling with the tumultuous socio-political landscapes, Hendrix's music was a beacon of rebellion and liberation. Jimi Hendrix was an alcoholic from his early youth. However, alcohol soon morphed from a source of enjoyment into a destructive force in Hendrix's life. It became the scourge of his existence, driving him to fits of rage and even rare bursts of physical violence. Linda Keith introduced Hendrix to LSD in late 1966, and after 1967, he regularly used cannabis, hashish, LSD, and amphetamines especially while on tour. When he drank excessively or mixed alcohol with substances, Hendrix often turned violent. His friend Herbie Worthington said, Hendrix simply turned into a bastard when he drank. One dark episode involved his girlfriend, Carmen Borrero, in a fit of drunken, jealous rage. Hendrix struck Borrero above her eye with a vodka bottle, causing a cut that required stitches. This violent behavior shocked those close to him, with some describing him as someone who seemed almost possessed by another being when he was under the influence. The year 1967 brought another scandal for Hendrix when he was arrested at Toronto International Airport. On May 3rd, customs officials discovered a small amount of substances and hashish in his luggage. Hendrix was promptly charged with substance possession, adding another layer of controversy to his already scandalous reputation. The tragic demise of rock legend Jimi Hendrix on September 18, 1970, remains shrouded in mystery and controversy. In the months leading up to his death, Hendrix seemed to be dogged by misfortune. In 1969, he had been abducted by mafia henchmen during a substance deal. He was released unharmed only after the mob bosses intervened. His band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, had disbanded. His music festival performances were tarnished by his substance use, and his health was in decline. His relationship with his manager, Michael Jeffrey, a domineering figure with connections to the mob, was strained. Jeffrey had worked Hendrix to the point of exhaustion and kept the musician's finances purposely murky. Hendrix confessed to friends and journalists that he felt adrift, persecuted, and unable to trust those surrounding him. During a trip to Morocco in 1969, a tarot reading by a clairvoyant witch revealed the ominous death card. Hendrix took the prediction to heart, telling a friend, "I'm going to die before I'm 30. Over the following year, he would eerily count down his remaining months. In his final days, Hendrix spent most of his time with Monika Danman, a 25-year-old German former ice skater with whom he had previously had fleeting encounters in London. Monika later claimed they were deeply in love and were planning to marry. On the night of his death, Hendrix, who frequently battled insomnia, asked Monika for a sedative. She provided him with Vesperex, a potent German sleeping pill she used for an old skating injury. In his weakened state, even 3 or 4 double doses could have been lethal. Monika believed he might have taken as many as 9.
How much sleep do you need to be alert?
Alert? I guess about 8.
8 hours?
Yeah, I had about 8 minutes. I'm pretty tired. I've been recording so much,
You're tired now?
Yeah, I haven't had to sleep in about all night. I've been working on the last LP.
What really happened to you that night at Woodstock?
I know what's happening. I was so exhausted,
Yeah.
It was like what do you call those things? Nervous breakdown or whatever.
You ever had a nervous breakdown?
Yeah, about 3 of them since I've been in this business,
Really? Can you tell some nights you're just not making it at all? Do you ever have the urge to just walk off and
That's why I hate
apologize?
compliments. Compliments are so embarrassing sometimes because you know really the truth of what's happening. I think it's the last job we do until, take a rest.
Really?
It's like we've been working very hard for 3 years.
Monika's accounts of the events on the morning of Hendrix's death varied greatly over the years. In her most widely accepted version, she found Hendrix asleep and went out to buy cigarettes. Upon returning, she noticed vomit around his mouth and couldn't wake him up. An ambulance was finally called at 11:18 a.m., arriving at the hotel at 11:27 a.m., well over 2 hours after Monika's earliest reported wake-up time. In a panic, Monika called her friend, Alvinia Bridges, who later claimed that Monika was hysterical, saying that Hendrix was unconscious and vomiting. She advised her to turn him over to prevent choking, but Monika failed to do so. After calling Bridges, Monika left to buy cigarettes and had to be persuaded during the second phone call to call an ambulance. She was worried about all the substances scattered around the room and feared that Hendrix would be upset to wake up handcuffed to a hospital bed. Even the accounts from the medical teams who attended to Hendrix are inconsistent. The ambulance crew reported that they found the apartment empty and Hendrix unresponsive, his throat blocked with vomit that had been dried up. Paramedic Reginald Jones told his girlfriend, Kathy, that we tried to revive him, but we couldn't. The vomit was all dried. He'd been lying there for a long time. There was no heartbeat. He was blue, not breathing and not responding to light or pain, end quote. Dr. John Bannister, the on-call registrar who had tended to Hendrix that day, believed him to have been dead for hours, but would claim he was covered in red wine, saying the amount of wine that was over him was just extraordinary. Bannister was quoted in the Times in 2009, continuing, "Not only was it saturated right through his hair and shirt, but his lungs and stomach were absolutely full of wine. We kept sucking him out and it kept surging and surging. He had really drowned in a massive amount of red wine," end quote. The likeliest available explanation for the presence of red wine came from Sharon Lawrence, who wrote in her 2005 book, Jimi Hendrix, The Man, The Magic, The Truth, that on a phone call in 1996, she directly asked Monica if she poured wine down Hendrix's throat herself. Monica's reply, she claimed, was, "It was all untidy. He was messy. I thought it would help." End quote. The unusual array of conflicting narratives combined with the mysterious happenings leading up to his passing has fueled sensational theories of murder plots and assassinations. The FBI's counterintelligence program, designed to neutralize influential Black figures, had files on Hendrix. His name was even listed among America's most subversive figures by the CIA as part of a surveillance program called MH Chaos. According to his brother Leon, Hendrix was on a list on the same level as Osama bin Laden later on after 9/11, saying biographer Philip Norman. At the time of Hendrix's death, America was in the throes of extreme paranoia. The government had contingency plans to round up individuals they perceived as threats and detain them in camps. Hendrix had begun affiliating with radical Black groups like the Black Panthers, a move that would undoubtedly unsettle the government or the intelligence agencies, given his substantial influence over the white audiences. Rumors of mafia involvement also swirled. In 1975, Monica, the woman who spent Hendrix's last hours with him, alleged in an interview that Hendrix had been murdered by mobsters. "I do believe that he got poisoned, that he actually got murdered," she told biographer, "but you were with him!" You were with him, so, okay, girl. There is something really behind the whole thing, and there's quite a powerful group behind all that. I think it's in the media, end quote. I think she's just trying to take heat off of herself, because you were with him, sis. Sis, you were with him, okay? And you didn't call the police or ambulance when you should have. 2 hours later, to the point where the vomit was dried up in his throat, explain that. Okay. And they even tried to say the manager did it, that Michael Jeffrey, the mobster, did it so he can cash in on his life insurance, $2 million, because he was going broke and he owed the mobsters. But no, he was still going to get money from Hendrix, even if they separated up until the 70s. So he really didn't have reason to. And he never got any money from life insurance or anything like that from Hendrix. He ended up dying in a plane crash. So we can dismiss that too. With Monica's taking her life in 1996, the mystery of Hendrix's final hours may have been buried with her. The truth of what happened that fateful night remains as elusive as the man himself, okay? But also, people said that Monica lied about, "Oh, he was so in love with me, we were about to marry, blah, 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 blah." That wasn't the truth, okay? According to people that were around, they fought a lot. I don't know. Sometimes these people would set you up with women also if they did want to take her life. Like when you think of people that died in the heat, like think of Samson and Delilah. Let's just say that. A lot of people die from their lovers. They'll be the ones that give you substance. Your guards is down, you're not thinking about it, and they'll send them. Like I did a video for Josephine Baker. She was a spy also. They would send her to flirt with leaders and stuff and get information and send back to people. So governments do it. Mobsters do it. Hollywood does it. They'll send people to set you up, women, or men even, if that's what you're into, vice versa, whatever, to set you up and take you out of here, or to set you up and blackmail you, take pictures of you and, compromising situations. They'll even send, I know it sounds crazy, but there's stories that I'm going to do for you guys this year where they'll send minors. That's how low morally they are. They'll send minors to sleep with these people to trap them in lawsuits in the future. That these minors will lie about their age. They pay the parents, they pay the minors. And it's like the minors don't realize what's happening until they get older and they realize just how dark it was. And if the minors try to speak out and, stuff like that, they'll end up dead. It's just crazy. Hollywood is dark. It's a dark period and it's literally Babylon. And there's nothing good about it. All the glamour, I feel so disillusioned. Like I'm finally woken up. All the glamour is just, it's so unappealing now, knowing what you know and just how dark it can get. But let's talk about the 27 Club. In the iconic song The Devil Went Down to Georgia by the Charlie Daniels Band, a young man named Johnny Boldly takes on the devil in a high-stakes fiddle duel. With his extraordinary talent, Johnny triumphs over the devil and walks away with a golden fiddle as his pride. Yet this captivating tale of musical prowess and supernatural showdown is not truly a story about Johnny or fiddles. Instead, it echoes a chilling myth that swept across the 1920s and 1930s. The belief that certain unparalleled blues artists had struck a devilish deal, trading their souls for unprecedented musical genius. This dark legend was linked to blues pioneers like Tommy Johnson and Robert Johnson, who were considered some of the greatest country blues guitarists of their time. According to voodoo folklore, to strike a bargain with the devil, one would trim their nail, take a black cat, take the bone of the cat and a guitar, and venture to a secluded crossroads at midnight. As they sat there playing their best piece, all the while longing for the devil, they would soon hear music growing louder as an unseen musician approached. Without turning around, they would feel a tug at their instrument. They should let the devil take it, continue to strum their fingers as if still playing. The devil would then hand them his guitar to play, accompanying them on their own. After a while, he would trim their nails until they bled before returning their guitar. Despite the pain and fear, they must keep playing without looking back. As the devil's music faded away, they could finally head home, now possessing the ability to play any piece they desired on the guitar and manipulate the world as they pleased. However, the price was steep. They had sold their souls and were damned to hell. The eerie parallels between Jimi Hendrix and Robert Johnson are impossible to ignore. Both are guitar geniuses, enthralled by fame and ensnared by alcohol. They were restless spirits, wandering from place to place, who met their untimely ends in their 20s, leaving the full potential of their genius unfulfilled. Both seemed resigned to the belief that they were destined for damnation, a theme that permeated their lyrics. Johnson sang of a hellbound on my trail and his plea for divine mercy on Crossroads Blues. Similarly, Hendrix declared himself a voodoo child and painted a mythic picture of a mountain lion setting him on an eagle's wing, urging him to fly on. You're a voodoo child. In Gypsy's Eyes, Hendrix told a tale of soul-searching and escape, singing about two strange men fighting to the death over him. His lyrics were strewn with metaphors that echoed the voodoo theme, reflecting the torment he felt. And you have a whole song called Voodoo Child, right? Believing himself possessed by spirits. An article in the November 1990 issues of Living Blues, the authoritative voice of the blues, highlighted that both Johnson and Hendrix firmly believed they were haunted by spirits and struggled with this torment, which resonated in their music. One of Hendrix's girlfriends from the mid-1960s shared chilling recollections, and I quote, "He was so tormented and just so torn, like he was obsessed with something really evil."
Jimi Hendrix's live-in girlfriend, Fane Pridgeon, also spoke of Hendrix's admission to being demon-possessed.
He used to always talk about some devil or something was in him, and he didn't have any control over it. He didn't know what made him act the way he acted and what made him say the things he said and songs and different things like that just come out of him. At first, I used to think it was a cop-out when he had really done me in, right? And he'd say, I don't know what come over me, I really can't understand it. But it was so sad when he would cry. It just killed me when he cried because he felt like, it seems like to me, he was so tormented and just torn apart and like he really was obsessed, with something really evil. Like you're from Georgia, he said, I should know how, people drive demons. I used to talk about my grandmother and all her weird stuff, and he used to talk about us going down there and having some root lady or somebody see if she could drive this demon out of him.
All I have to say for this video is that, wow, is it worth gaining the whole world and losing your soul? I think this is one of my first videos where I actually share my beliefs with you guys. Following Christ, to me, is one of those things that you do that doesn't come with alcoholism in the package, with taking your whole life in the package, with depression in the package. If you really follow the Bible, it never asks you to do anything evil. Anything evil. It's full of love. Okay? Jesus himself was the author of love. And it's just funny how these people, they get into the industry, they serve these gods, they follow after these gods, and they're never happy. They're never transformed for the better. They're always depressed. They meet an untimely end. The devil is real. Okay? And he comes in many, many forms, many different religions to just steer you away from the light. It is a battle. I don't know how people can watch his videos and believe in Satan. These people can tell you that they made a deal with Satan. They put Satan in their music. They hypnotize you. They worship him. How can you believe in Satan and not believe in his arch nemesis, Jesus? How could you not? That's the only thing that I say. If he indeed sold his soul to the devil, then the devil exists if they say it. You see how they're influenced with it and people will come. Even a lot of sports, I'm going to do a couple of videos too, but a lot of them, it's not even the substances they take, like steroids. They just make a deal and all of a sudden they have almost this supernatural ability to play sports where the game is almost not fair. They're possessed. It's supernatural. Their body is doing things that the average person, no matter how many times they practice, no matter how many times they rehearse, they could never do it because it's not natural. It's just not natural. And I don't know what to say. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. Comment below your thoughts. Don't forget to check out my description box. If you like the background music you listen to, the link is also in the description. Comment below who else would you guys like to listen to. And I'm curious to see the discussion below. And I know many of you guys won't agree, but I felt compelled to share my own little personal beliefs in this video. I love you guys. Until next time.